Hello and welcome, book friends. It's great to have you here. My name is Colin. I like to talk about books. That's what we do here. Today, we are talking about the mid-year book Freakout tag. And if you have no idea what that is, like me last week, I'll explain it real quick. But first, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what your favorite book is. I would love to get to know you guys a little bit. So the mid-year book Freakout tag is essentially a series of questions, I think 14 in total, that sort of prompt you to answer questions about all the reading that you've done so far in the year. Kind of a halfway point check-in. And the final question is a prompt for what you're going to read for the rest of the year. That's what I know about it. I've just found out about the tag last week myself and was kind of confused when I saw it popping up all over my Booktube feed. But it is what it is, and this is what I'm doing. So, yeah. Question number 1. The best book I read in 23 is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I freaking love this book. I know it's only the first book in the series, but The Eye of the World is honestly just so freaking good. I think also I've kind of been missing that sort of classical vein high fantasy in my life this year so far, and this book is just like really scratching that itch of fantasy that feels kind of more like Tolkien and less dark and grimdark and Game of Thronesy and witchery, which is a lot of what I've been reading. And I think the sort of less dark, more epic, heroic vibes kind of just, I was missing that, you know? And I'm happy that I have this book to kind of fill that void. And after finishing this book, I'm really excited for the rest of the series, to be honest. Question number 2. What was the best sequel you read in 2023? This is kind of a easy/hard answer because I only read one series so far. I started The Wheel of Time, but I haven't finished book 2 yet. I'm assuming, based on what I've read so far, that book 2 of The Wheel of Time would be the answer if I had finished it, but I have not. So we'll have to talk about the Witcher series, which is the one series that I have completed this year so far. The Witcher series is a little bit complicated to talk about just because there's 8 books, but 2 of them are short story compilations. One of them is a novella that happens during the short stories, but was published last. And then we have the 5 books in the Witcher saga, which is the story of Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer and how they become a found family sort of thing. Yeah, so I had to kind of decide how I was going to rate it. And I just decided I'm just going to choose my favorite book from the saga to answer this. And that was book 4, The Tower of Swallows. Isn't this Netflix sticker here just ugly? I hate this. This is a terrible trend and publishers should stop doing it. That's beside the point. I like this book a lot. I think it was one of the best paced in terms of story progression throughout the series. A lot of the other books either had really slow, draggy moments or were so filled with political intrigue, which was really good, but it didn't do a lot to drive the plot. And I feel like as far as plot driving, this book, in my feeling, kind of did the most. At least for Ciri, maybe not so much for Geralt. Yeah. Anyways, I think this was my favorite book in the series. You can argue with me about that. The Witcher series is not without its flaws. I didn't like it in its entirety. I remember breezing through this book, and I remember struggling a little bit more with the other ones to get through at a fast pace. And this one I literally read in a day and was like content to read it in a day and didn't feel like putting it down. So yeah, Tower of Swallows, favorite sequel this year. Question number 3 is, what's a new release that you have not read yet, but you really want to read? And there's so many. Honestly, my TBR is ever growing. New books, old books. I just can't seem to, catch up to my TBR without my TBR growing exponentially. Feels like for every book that I read, there's another 5 new ones that I need to add to my TBR. As far as new releases go, I'd say the Sanderson Secret Project, just because I see so many people talking about them. And I know that, I haven't read any Sanderson yet, but I doubt I'm going to hate his work. I've got Mistborn sitting on my shelf. I'm going to read it eventually. And I think Tress of the Emerald Sea and the Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Medieval England, or whatever it's called, I'm not sure. And the third project, which I won't name because apparently there's still some spoiler tags and stuff, so we're not going to name it. But those books really seem to, be worth all the hype, and I will definitely be reading those. Another one that is completely outside of the ballpark is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, because it's R.F. Kuang, and after reading Babel, I was just like, whoa. I also want to read The Poppy War by her, but that's not a new release. Yeah. that's my answer for this. So Sanderson secret projects that have been coming out this year, and Yellowface. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And my honest answer is I don't really have one because I haven't been keeping up to date with the releases of new books, mostly because I'm just in such a backlog and catching up with so many books that I should have read years ago that just looking into the future is just too much right now. I will see the new releases when they come out on my Bookstagram feed, on Booktube. I will hear people talking about them. And if I think that the vibe suits me, I will totally pick those books up and add them to my TBR, or maybe even just like impulsively buy them and read them despite my TBR and have a good time with it. I'm going to answer questions 5 and 6 together because it's the same book for both. And I try not to do repeats, but in this case, I kind of have to. So question 5 is, what was your biggest disappointment? And question 6 is, what was your biggest surprise of the year? And the big surprise is that I was so disappointed by this book because I thought going into it, I was going to love it. Based on reviews, based on the blurbs and the premise and everything, I was like, I'm going to love this book. It sounds amazing. And honestly, starting the book and getting into it, I was like, oh my God, this is so freaking good. And then the plot just kind of took a turn, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And I just couldn't continue liking the story because it was just a big old nope. And if you watched my previous video, you'll know that this book is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. There are so many good things about this book. The writing is really good. Character development, emotion, and the action sequences are so brilliantly written. It's so good, but the story just bothers me so much. The way the story went, I can't. And I can't say anything without giving away major spoilers of why I didn't like this book. If you've read it, you probably can guess. It happens about halfway through, and then it just takes a downward spiraling turn, and it just ruined the book for me, honestly. Like, despite the good writing and despite everything that M.L. Wang does right, and even though I know that the point of the story is not what I hoped the point of the story would be, and I know that this is the point of the story to be that way, I just don't like it. And that's just a very personal thing. I don't vibe with that kind of story. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. I know a lot of people love this book. It's just not for me. Question number 7 is, who is a new favorite author that you started reading this year? And I have 2 authors, honestly, that would fit the bill. One of them, of course, being Robert Jordan with The Eye of the Worlds in the Wheel of Time series. I just freaking love it. Is it perfect? No. Is it still an 11 out of 10? For me, so far, absolutely yes. I am so excited to read the rest of the series, and I don't know. I'm just so freaking taken with the world building and the characters. And the second author who fits the bill is R.F. Kuang, of course. I read Babel, and I freaking loved it. I have not read The Poppy War or Yellowface yet. I plan to read both at some point. Maybe not this year, but I will read them. I just really love the way she writes. Her prose is really good, and she seems to be very clever at sort of interweaving fantasy elements, fiction elements, academic elements, and at the same time making points about various issues. And I think that's just really cool. We can kind of breeze through question number 8 because the question is, who is your newest fictional crush? And the really easy, fast answer is I don't really do fictional crushes, especially in books. In the past, maybe a little bit in series, but even then, like, my romantic life has always been more based in reality, I guess. Even though, like, sure, some of my crushes were deluded and out of my league and never gonna happen, but that's a whole different story for a different time. Question number 9, who's your newest favorite character? There's a bunch who I can mention here. I'm gonna say my number 1 spot. I was thinking about it as I was going through the prompts, and I was like, you know what? Actually, this is a really weird one, but Zoltan Chivay, I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, but the dwarf from the Witcher series who kind of supports Geralt and Ciri in their journey, he really just struck me as this really kind of fun, gruff, badass, kind of helping, supporting character who's not there for a whole bunch of the time, but he left a lasting impression and gave these like slightly unhinged yet still responsible crazy uncle vibes. And also the parrot that he has on his shoulder who keeps swearing at people and about the situations they're in. It's really funny. Probably like traveling with Zoltan Chevet in the Witcher series is probably one of my favorite moments throughout the series, partially because of him. Honorable mentions: Wheel of Time series, Elias, the Wolf brother. I don't know why, but something about him just made me go like, that dude is cool. He's got wolves. He doesn't talk much. I don't know what else to say except that like he just struck me, I guess. The other character who I fell in love with is Tom Marilyn, the Glee man from The Wheel of Time. He just seems like there's more to him than meets the eye. He's a bard, and as a musician, like I always relate to like entertainer characters a little bit. Dude's cool, got mystery, helps the main characters out a lot, and seems to be kind of like awesome. Those are some of my favorite characters so far. Question number 10, a book that made me cry this year. None so far. I've cried in the past at books. The Fault in Our Stars made me cry when I read it like 4 or 5 years ago. But this year, nada. Question number 11 is, what is a book that made you happy this year? And my answer is a little bit odd because it also made me happy for a bit of an odd reason. And the book is Babel by R.F. Kuang. The reason why this book made me happy is because it was so dark, but it felt satisfyingly dark. The Witcher was also dark and it had a satisfying story, but a lot of the darker, grittier, sort of grimdark fantasy elements within The Witcher gave me a bit of an ick and felt a little bit overdone and unnecessary for the plot at times. Then, of course, the other book that sort of has these sort of darker elements in them is the sort of Kaigen, which I didn't really like at all. And I started questioning before I read Babel whether these darker stories are even something I really vibe with anymore. And it scared me a little bit because I have a bunch of dark reading to do that's on my TBR, and I was just like, what if I just can't like these books anymore? What if I need lighthearted fairy tales and that's all that I can still read these days? And then I read Babel and I was like, no, we're good. Good executed dark book is still totally the vibe, and that's how I felt with Babel. I also did feel that way with Game of Thrones back when I read it a couple of years ago. I mean, The Song of Ice and Fire, the complete series, I read all of it. I'm still waiting desperately for Winds of Winter. That's besides the point. I really liked that I liked Babel, and it made me happy that I could enjoy a dark book fully and that I felt satisfied reading a dark book despite all the darkness. That sounds really repetitive. But anyways, on to the next question. Question number 12 is, what is your favorite book to screen adaptation? Look, I'll be honest with you. There isn't one. I don't think I've watched a lot of adaptations of things that I've read. And the only answer that I can give about any adaptations is ones that I didn't like, which is The Witcher. After reading the books, watching season 3 was just a pain. Major pain, but not as much as a pain as giving the first episode of the Wheel of Time series a try after reading the book. I didn't watch the series because I was like, I know I'm going to read the books by Robert Jordan before I even start watching it. I watched 40 minutes of episode 1 and I just couldn't continue. It felt so like I can't. I just couldn't. It physically, it almost physically hurt me to watch that series and to see what was being done with this book that I just got out of and loved so much. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I just finished it and I just watched episode 1. I'm just not here for it. And I don't think I'm going to watch the series, to be honest. I'm going to read the books and I'm going to be happy with my life. Question 13 is, what is the most beautiful book, or what are the most beautiful books that you've bought this year? It is the Roots of Chaos special edition set from the Broken Binding, Priory of the Orange Tree, and A Day of Fallen Night, with these beautiful, beautiful sprayed edges. They also have these beautiful naked hardcovers with foiling designs and this quote on the spine. It's just freaking beautiful. And same thing with Priory. A Day of Fallen Night is blue. Priory, of course, is orange. Sorry about booping the microphone. It's with silver foiling, and also these really nice sort of cover inside artworks. Those are the prettiest books I've got. I saw someone posting these books and I was like, those are pretty and I need to have them. I read Priory of the Orange Tree and I enjoyed it. And when I saw that like there was a double set, I was just like, you know what? A Day of Fallen Night must be good too, because I like Priory a lot. So I got them. And I will eventually read A Day of Fallen Night as well, and I will probably reread Priory. And when I do, we will talk about the books and their contents and the stories. With that, we've arrived at the final question, which is, what books do you still need to read by the end of the year? And for me, the answer is pretty simple and straightforward. I want to finish the Wheel of Time series in entirety before the year is over. It's ambitious, but I am quite a fast reader, so I think I can do it. We'll see how that goes. I'll keep you updated, of course. And then there's another series that I want to add to that list, which is Mistborn, Era 1 by Brandon Sanderson. As a fantasy nerd, fantasy reader, fantasy fan, I feel like it's absolutely a travesty that I have not read any Sanderson yet, when he is by far the most hyped contemporary fantasy author at the moment. And everyone's raving about him. Everyone's comparing pretty much everything else by everyone else to him a little bit in one way or another, or uses him as a point of reference. And I think that I will have to get into that real soon just to know what all the hype is about, you know? And also, I feel like based on what I've heard, I think I'm going to enjoy those books a lot. So yeah, this was my mid-year book freakout tag. I'm going to leave all the question prompts in the description, so feel free to check them out if you want to do this yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment, share your thoughts, recommend a book, tell me where you're from, tell me what you're reading, whatever, you know, just tell me something. Once again, thank you so much. I'm Colin, I'm bookish, and I'm out. Bye!